Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the From Adversity to Abundance podcast. I am your host, Jamie Bateman, and I'm pumped today to have with us Connor Steinbrook. Connor is the founder of the Wolfpack Revenue Share Organization and one of the top 30 EXP Realty influencers. And among other things, we'll get into everything else, some of the other things that you have your hands in, Connor. But Connor, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great as well. This is I've already had a fun time chatting with you before we hit record. So we just needed to hit record so the audience could enjoy this time as well. So for the listener out there, beyond what I just said, who are you, Connor, and what are you up to today?
Yeah, in a nutshell, I had some doors open to other doors, and I think that's how business is for a lot of entrepreneurs, where sometimes their start doesn't always end up where they thought it was going to go, and leads to other doors that actually could be the business that was the one that made them. But I started out in a weird path. I live in Dallas, Texas. I went to the University of Oklahoma for when I went to college back in 2003, which is a little bit of time ago. I'm getting up there now. I'm about to turn 39, but I went to college, and at the time I was living in the freshman dorm. And what happened was the online poker boom exploded, and a guy named Chris Moneymaker won the World Series of Poker and satellited in from an online tournament or something like that.
Okay.
And did it. He made millions of dollars off like an initial $40, some type of investment. And every college kid in America's head exploded and said, "My mom gave me $40, or I can get $40." And it created this big boom on the internet. And so I started playing for really low stakes and worked my way up from pennies to dollars, tens of dollars, and was one of the top online poker players for about 8 years. And then government regulation kicked in, and the U.S. Department of Justice shut down the big poker sites. There's kind of a weird thing going on. They were not really regulated. They were hosted outside the U.S. on islands from like the Alderney Gaming. Is kind of a weird situation. And what does government do when they can't tax you or regulate you? They either figure out how to get their piece or they destroy you. Pretty much is what happened.
Yeah.
And the websites got shut down. And it wasn't that they got shut down. It was the way that they got shut down. Imagine waking up to go to work and logging on, and the U.S. Department of Justice sees the way you make a living and you did nothing wrong. So it wasn't like the poker players did, it was the sites. And so what happened was they seized the sites, and almost a decade of my life was surrounding one skill set, and I didn't have anything else going on, and it was now gone. And so my identity disappeared overnight. So did my environment. So all my best friends, everybody, we were all doing this together. It wasn't just like me. So it was a really crazy time. People took their own lives. There's all sorts of problems came from it. And
well, let me jump in for a second.
Obviously, I was a young kid.
Yeah. So I had a friend. I'm a little bit older than you, and I had a friend my age from college who was playing poker as well. And honestly, at the time, I was like, "What do you mean you play poker for a living? I don't get that." Like it. So, and I do remember this change in his life as well. It was a massive overnight shift. And to your point about your identity, I think that's easily glossed over because, and we've had some guests on the show. In fact, I've talked about this myself with, my identity in college was wrapped up in playing lacrosse. I was, very good lacrosse player. We were number one in the country in Division III. And, the listener might, if you're not familiar with that sport, they might say, well, you were playing a sport. Who cares? It's like you were playing this online game. Who cares? Right. But it's like, no, you did this for 8 years. This is who you were. And you said you were one of the top poker players in the country. It's not just about your income that's vanished overnight due to outside, conditions, but it's who you were. So to me, that's like, I don't want to gloss over that because it's just a massive thing. We've had a professional baseball player on the show who got injured and had to kind of come back home and put his tail between his legs and just reinvent himself. And it's like, you could say, well, he was a professional baseball player, must be nice. Yeah, he did that for a year or two, and then his entire world was rocked. So I don't want to keep rambling on because this show's not about me, it's about you. But I mean, kind of just dive into that a little bit more as far as the identity piece. I mean, 8 years, you don't have to say how much you were making or anything, but what was the context? Kind of give us a little more detail about the context leading up to that Friday where everything was shut down.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you brought that up. So I was actually, I played lacrosse. I played all sports, but I actually I was a deep hole. So I played at Plano West, which our high school is the Wolfpack. So if you look on the internet, Plano West in North Dallas, we were the Wolfpack, which later hence where I brought the team name, the Wolfpack, from.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I went into poker for one reason, was that I did play a lot of team sports, and I was in that kind of environment and played a lot of team sports. And then when everything disappeared, and I went off to college, or I stopped playing sports, I went off to college, and I kind of had maybe an identity crisis there, because I was always an athlete and I didn't really maybe identify it like that. But when I came across poker, it filled in the loss of competition, a loss of, everything that we get from playing sports, if that kind of makes sense. So like poker filled the gap of when I stopped playing baseball, basketball, football, and lacrosse and all that type of stuff. But yeah, I mean, with my poker career, I made good money. I don't think, people probably think, we made way more than we did. I mean, some people made millions of dollars and probably making 7 figures a year. I mean, I made decent money, but I was at a point where a lot of people asked me, like, when the sites got shut down, did I have money tied up on them and things like that? Negligible amounts. Like the big hurt from this was the future opportunity cost of the skill set of what the income it could create from it. I didn't capitalize. So you think about a business or anything, growing anything like social media, the effort and risk and the adversities of mostly front loaded, and then the payoffs on the back end. And what was so tough was I did have struggles along the way, and I went broke a number of times, and I started over, and I'd just gotten into like where I was at the peak of my career. Like I was really like crushing everybody, just to be honest, not to flex, but like I was really at where I was figured the game out, and then it pulled the plug, and it's like, holy crap, like all this that I invested in, everything that I'd done to get to this point is just gone. So that was really kind of
set this. Yeah, sorry to cut. So, but there was zero warning. It's not like you had a warning of in 12 months they're thinking about doing this, or there was zero warning whatsoever, right?
Not from my mindset. So I had no idea it was coming. Now, maybe going back historically, there might have been some back whispers in the wind, maybe that something like this could happen. But for most of us, like, it was literally, we went to bed. I mean, like literally I got up that day. So I did like a pre routine before I started playing, where I'd stretch and get all my drinks at the table. And I had like a whole system, because I'm getting ready to go war for the day. And I get all that done. I get on, I log on, and there's a big banner, U.S. Department of Justice has seized full tilt poker. And I'm like, that's weird. Wow. What's going on here? And I was like, that's okay. Something's happening, they'll figure it out. And then I'm like, I'm going to go log into PokerStars. And then that same thing, I logged into PokerStars, and that same thing, U.S. Department of Justice has seized PokerStars and shut it down. And I was like, holy crap, what is going on? And I actually was in a little bit of denial in the beginning, where I don't think I let it emotionally hit me, because there's like a week or two where like I really didn't let it. So there's like a weird window of time where it like didn't hit, and then it hit like really hard. And it was, I made some bad mistakes, and this is a good lesson for you entrepreneurs, that you are going to come across massive adversity on your journey, and you're going to have problems and all sorts of things that seem unfair, or you're even cursed. But maybe we'll go into this later. Sometimes these are blessings for you. But like you're gonna have to go through these things, and you just have to take it on the chin and keep going, because like, what if I'd stopped at that moment and gave up on life, which is a choice I had. And one of the big things I want you guys to understand is, when bad things happen, or just even a small problem in the business happens, emotional awareness and emotional control, don't let the problem that you're facing lead to other problems. Problems are normal and natural. What's not a problem, or what is the problem, is when you have one problem that compounds itself into others. So let's say I have like a rental property, and a HVAC goes out. Well, if I take that problem or that headache, and I take the emotion from it, and I go back, now I'm on the road and someone's driving by me and they almost cut me off, and I'm getting in a road rage fight. I go home and I have bad mood, and I give an attitude to the kids and kick the dog away from me and fight with the wife. This is where life gets hurt, and other businesses get hurt, not just for ourselves, but others. Where that's really good. Negative emotion and problems and compound it. But
compounding.
What I do is I lost all my money playing blackjack and craps. So I took the emotional hit from that, and I made some very immature emotional decisions to go gamble off pretty much the rest of what I had. And I gambled off playing blackjack and craps, and before I knew it, I was in debt and had to move back home with my parents. And I was living in my sister's old bedroom, my 3-year-old sister, because mine was now storage, and trying to figure out what the hell I'm going to do in life. And I literally gone from sports cars, diamond watches, $1,000 nights at the bar, to living in my sister's bedroom on a single twin bed with a bar stool as my computer desk, and wondering how I got here. And it actually led me to a point where I almost took my own life. And I'm a little bit more open with this over time, because I understand that people get trapped in this. And for me to get out of what I was in when I thought there was no escape from it, and to have the life I have now, I want you guys to understand no storm lasts forever. And I did get in kind of that mindset trap. And it wasn't that I wanted to take my own life. It was that I didn't know how to live life at the moment, where I felt my best days were behind me and my future was never going to be as good as the days that I once had. And it kind of created like this very cyclical negative loop where I just took all hope and faith out of my future. And then really what happened was two things happened simultaneously. I brought my faith back into my life. And then I came across personal education and self-development, came across Napoleon Hill's Principles of Success, his 17 Principles of Success, those old black and white recordings, which led me to Think and Grow Rich, which led me to like a lot of the cliche entrepreneurship books, As a Man Thinketh, Richest Man in Babylon. Kind of went down that path and got big into Earl Nightingale, Bob Proctor, Les Brown, Zig Ziglar, and it really got heavy into personal education. Now what that did was,
just jump in for a minute. Basically, I mean, one thing I just drew out is that I want to draw out for the listeners that compounding can go both ways, right? So you compounded it in a negative way for a little while there, making bad decisions because of the previous kind of bad storm you were in, even if it wasn't your doing per se. But then once you were able to flip that around to a positive mindset and positive actions and positive behavior, those started to compound on each other in a good way. So compounding is super, super powerful, whether negative or positive. But before we, what's that?
Yeah. It's just, what he's saying, just building momentum or a winning streak. So you hear losing streaks and winning streaks. That's exactly what he's talking about. You're compounding off of
absolutely
what you just did.
That's really good. So now just look, most of our listeners were never professional poker players, right? And are never going to be. And, so your story is unique, which is awesome. I mean, we've never had this story on the show before, but the reality is the principles are essentially are applicable across really anyone's story who's going through a hard time. And we've had guests on the show where, look, they were the primary cause of the hardship that they, it's really that compounding thing. But, and in this case, you weren't the cause of poker being shut down, but it's like, it really doesn't matter because that's the situation you found yourself in. So what we're trying to do here with the show is just inspire people, tell people, look, it is going to be okay. And hardship is normal, whether you caused it or not, it's going to happen. And so when you get there, don't be surprised. And so talk us through a little bit of that, mindset shift of like, once you were at rock bottom, I know you started to touch on it as far as finding different inspirational books and things, but how did you shift from, I don't want to say woe is me, but feeling like you didn't have a way out or your future was dark? Really, what was that turning point for you? How did you shift to the future has hope and light?
Yeah, I mean, the story that we tell ourselves is very important. So one thing was I convinced myself God hated me, I was cursed. And then I realized at one point I didn't abandon God, or I thought God abandoned me. I realized that I abandoned God. So that was the thought process I turned. And then there's a good ending to the story, guys. I run a business that has 2,800 agents that clears 7-figure net income. So at the time, that adversity that almost made me take my life was the best thing that could ever happen to me because it led me to a new life, but I didn't know that at the time. So I'm going through this. Could you imagine that I had done that and the outcome would have been this or anything else that you want to believe that you guys can create with your mind? So this is something. So when I started reading Think and Grow Rich and all these different things, I was an incredibly negative person. I didn't like myself. I didn't like the world. I didn't like God. I didn't like my parents. I hated everybody, blamed everybody. I was very negative, and I didn't realize that my thoughts were creating my environment. So there's two different thought processes. Does our internal thinking process create the environment, meaning the house, the car, the lifestyle that we have, or does the environment create our thinking process, meaning is it the government, the president is in control, who our partners are, what our parents are, do we have money or not, and what do I look like, my skin, like all these things that are external do not matter. The only thing that matters is your internal thought process, because we move towards what we think about. And so in the beginning of personal education, you're going to hear this. You're going to hear about the law of attraction, law of vibration, all these different things. And it gets you super pumped up and super excited. And what happened was I ran out there so confident, like I'm just like, you hear Jim Carrey talking about, he wrote a check and he's like, manifesting his future. And like, I was like, I'm going to be this huge real estate tycoon, do all this type of stuff. But then I hadn't built the skill sets yet. And I took unnecessary risks that I would not have if I didn't get so hyped up on this, like, I'm just going to manifest anything and do all this.
Sure.
And that's how I really kind of got myself into debt. And I think a lot of people go down this process in personal education and that understanding of what we're talking about here, and they run out real quick and they don't see an immediate result, and they start to doubt what they're doing and they question it, and then they back off the process, or they run out too quick and stumble over themselves like I did and get themselves into a negative spot and back off of it. And now they have a life problem that they can't get out of. But I convicted my belief that this was going to work. And I continued down that process, even during this hard time. But for you guys that are struggling, maybe new in business, from the day I started my business, I went 100 grand in debt, and it took me 1,100 days to get to the day where I came out of debt. So every single day I didn't take a single day off. Not flex. Like, I was terrified that everything was falling apart. So it's like I was thrown off this cruise ship in the ocean and nowhere to go. So you just keep swimming. So I was sun up, sundown every single day because it was survival mode. And then what happened was I finally got to where I got out of debt, and my partner stole like 30 grand and went right back into debt. So for many of the years of my beginning of my business, I worked extreme amounts of time, put a massive pressure on my body. It was horrific, and nothing came out of it, is what most people think. But what came out of it was the person that I built through all that adversity and struggle, that was now strong enough and aware enough to capitalize on future opportunities and hold them up and build them, that I could not have done without going through those struggles. So I think a lot of people feel problems in the early business, and they think, is this happening just to me? It happens to all of you guys. But you need to look at your problems as gifts to get stronger. So a problem is like lifting a weight. You don't go to the gym to run from the weight bench. You go there to specifically find it. So you're trying to find adversity. You're trying to find repetition and resistance. So the two things that make us grow in life are pushing against resistance and repetition. So you can't just really do like 10 reps when you could do 100. You're not going to break down and build up. So you need that resistance. Absolutely.
And there's definitely, there's definitely an art to it. It's not just a science. And as far as, when to pivot, when to change course. But one thing I'm pulling out is not just that your options are to give up or pivot, but there's also, I'll call it a governor, like a throttle, a governor on your throttle, if you will. So in other words, you were going in the right direction, it sounds like. But you initially, when you really started to ramp up with the growth, personal growth stuff, and it wasn't that your direction was wrong. It was just, sounds like your pace was too fast, and you didn't have that governor because you hadn't built up the skill sets in order to keep things, and moving in a safe way. I was actually just watching, just real quickly, we were watching this. It's called The Quarterback on Netflix. It's got Patrick Mahomes and Kirk Cousins and Marcus Mariota. Anyway, they go through the this last season, and one of the things Kirk Cousins was talking about was he gets so fired up all the time, and his coach was like, "Okay, first of all, I just need you to chill out, just to take a step back." And so it's not that the passion is bad, but you might need to bounce it off of your coach or someone else to help you kind of keep it in check, or keep that governor on it. But what are your thoughts to that?
Yeah, I think I just I'm sure others think like they're just going to go on this perfect, just I start here and I go upward trajectory. Like, right. You can't probably see me right now, but I think it's just going to be a straight up, path. Right. And a lot of times it gets worse before it gets better. Not always. I mean, you've seen people come in and spike their first business. It happens. Just not often. And also all that really matters is where you're at today. You're at a bad spot. Nothing's going the way you want. You need to know where you want to go tomorrow. And so that's all that you need to know. You need to know the outcome, like GPS, know where you're at, your address, the outcome is the address you want to go to. You type that in the middle, there's lots of turns and directions that you're going to have happen. Now you don't get to see that part along your journey. So it's kind of like Steve Jobs saying, you can't connect the dots until looking back. Now I can look back at my story and saw how everything opened up and how this led to this and this led to that and how doors led to doors. But most times the first business you're going to start is not going to be the business you end out with. And so I started with poker, ended up in real estate investing, then went into YouTube and social media that led to team building and other businesses along the way. So all that you need to know, this is the key to success. Literally show up every day and work every day and never stop until what you have in your mind that you're focusing on is hit. And so I can tell you right now that I had goals to become the number one, net growth leader at EXP, and all these different things that, Now, as of just a couple months ago, for some of the recent statistics, I was number one net growth in the month of May out of 88,000 agents at our company. So these were things that like could seem almost impossible when you were at the point of where I was. I was actually working a minimum wage job. I was stocking shelves at Academy Sports and Outdoors while I was trying to keep enough money to keep my websites going. And so along the way, it definitely did not pan out the way I had in my vision in the beginning. But if you stay in for long enough and you stay in the game for long enough, what happens is the world's going to introduce you to the right people, the right opportunities are going to come across at the right time. But you have to be active. You can't just sit there in a room and say, this is, I'm a millionaire, whatever it is. You need to get out there and be around people. So the first thing that really, especially post-pandemic, when people are antisocial, people have your opportunities, people have your money, people have your systems. Everybody else out there has something of value that they can give to you and you can give to them. And so by getting out to networking events and finding mentors and, trying to do podcasts, and just the more people the more you're going to grow. And so I would think about, if your guys are newer in business, just think about building your database as far as how many phone contacts you have in your email list, or in your phone and in your email list. There's a direct relationship to the amount of contacts that you have that leads to a back-end income stream. And then I'd focus not just building your mind, build your body. So the first thing I did was I changed my fitness. I had low self-esteem. I hated how I looked. I lost like 60, 70 pounds and I got jacked. Now I respected myself. It gave me the ability to go out there and others respected me. So the first step, I think, in personal growth is physical vitality. If you don't have the energy to work hard, you will not work hard when things get tough. You're going to like, if you're struggling in business, but you also feel bad in your body, this is a recipe for failure that you're going to step back. So fix your body first, because it affects your mind. Because if you're always feeling, bad about yourself, you're not going to get on social media and things like that. So build your body, build your mind, and then both those, once they're built, your bank account naturally gets built behind it. But it's not going to be quick, and you're going to have some punches in the face along the way. But trust that your vision and your goals will hit at some point, as long as you show up every single day. And I can tell you, most days along the journey, I wanted to quit, and I didn't think it was going to happen. I convinced myself, if I just keep going, at some point it will, and it did. And it took a lot longer than I thought it would, but just stay in the game, guys.
With regard to you touched on this before we hit record, and we danced around it a little bit already, but as far as, is there such a thing as too much mindset, or personal growth consumption? Can you take it too far, or as long as you're taking action, there's no such thing as too much? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I look at like how we strengthen our mind the same way we strengthen our body. There is probably an excessive amount, not because it's too much. It's just, there's an opportunity cost to your time that can go into other things. Like,
that's really good.
You can get pretty good shape going to the gym 2 hours a day. You don't need to go 10 hours a day, if that makes sense a little bit. Like, but you need to stay consistent on it. Like, and also, like, the thing about personal education and building your intelligence and your mental fortitude, it's not I go to college for 4 years and I get my college education, never read a book again, and it just stays with me. Your mind's going to go just as your body does. If you work out really hard for 3 years and you're stage ready, you're jacked, and all of a sudden you stop and you change all your patterns, and now you're went from water, clean eating, to sodas and hamburgers for every meal, you're going to lose your body. You can't just like read a whole bunch of, go down the path of self-development hard for like a year or two and be like, I'm good. I got it. I'm good to go. And then the next 10 years, you don't pick up a book. It's a continuous growth effort throughout our life to maintain. But I would say in the beginning, just like your body, build it aggressively, get in there. But once you get the plane off the ground, meaning you've kind of developed a strong foundation, then it's more in coast mode. So I was pretty aggressive. I was reading tons of books, podcasts. Like, it was like, say I'm in a meeting with a contractor or something. As soon as I got in my car driving to the next property, put on Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, whatever it is. And, it was all day, every day for like 5 years, really, really aggressively. So I was about 5 years. Now I still do it, heavy personal education, but it's not like,
it's not as intense as
maybe
it was.
An hour a day.
Sure. Got it. Yep. Yeah. It makes perfect sense. And more maintenance, and you're still experiencing growth, I'm sure, but it's just not as much time is necessary to invest. And I love what you pointed out about the opportunity cost, because your time is finite. You cannot replace it. So it's not to say that listening to Jim Rohn now is bad, but what are you not doing instead of doing that? And that's huge. And I was a similar way, where when I I went part-time at my job in 2015. I was still had a really long commute, like an hour and 15 minutes one way, and just started cranking on, real estate podcasts and different things that were going to inspire me and to take action. It really did change the trajectory of my career. And last year I quit my W-2 and, much more focused on business now. And, but I agree with you that it doesn't need to be that intense all the time. There's just kind of a season for intensity, and then you get up off the ground, and then you kind of can work it into your life at, different levels as you need to. But it may not be balance every day, but you do need to address, like you said, personal growth in the mindset, but also physical. And you can't just let one completely slide long-term for the other. So I love everything you're spitting out. It's awesome.
Yeah. And I think it helps, like, a lot of people, when they see someone successful like myself. Let's see. So, like, you see, I don't know if y'all are doing this on audio, but I got like vision boards.
Vision board. Yeah.
So I do these things. This is what led me, affirmations, vision boards, creating visions, intentful goal setting. I've done this for years. This is the outcome of what this does. So it's not wishy-washy or woo-woo or anything like that. You move towards what you think about and what you focus on. So like if you want a Lamborghini, so you can't have a Lamborghini if you never think about a Lamborghini. Now, if you see a Lamborghini, now it triggers what's, now, so the awareness, hey, that's a Lamborghini. I now know one exists. Now I might want one. So you can't have anything you don't think about. So you cannot just have a Lamborghini show up in your driveway if you don't even know what a Lamborghini is. So the first thing is you need to think about what you want. That's the first step. So everything goes from an intellectual to emotional to a physical process. So the first step is an intellectual understanding. Okay, I want to build a business, or I want a wife, or I want this. You create a picture in your mind. Then you emotionally involve yourself in it. Oh, wow, that car is really sick. What is it? That's a Lamborghini. Oh, I really want one. Now you emotionally involve yourself in it. And if the emotional involvement's high enough, you'll push past and start taking risks to go get it. And and that's why you hear about getting a why. If your why is not emotionally strong enough, when things get tough, you sit down. So you need to pick a why that's going to push you past your emotional ups and downs, because they're going to come. And then if you stay in the game long enough, you'll physically have the car show up in your driveway. So like, let's say you're going to paint a picture like the Mona Lisa. Yeah. Well, did it just show up on a piece of paper, or was it visually seen in the mind first? So is the intellectual understanding, the visual picture in the mind, the emotional attachment that this is what I want to do with my time and take the risk of sitting there painting something, and then physically it shows up. But the most important thing you need to understand is you cannot have anything you do not think about. So it's very important to keep everything you want in your mindset at all times. And that's what's going to help. And then follow it up with the time and effort and the risk along the way. But a lot of people just don't have the things they want because they never think about it. And then they touch on it for a second, but they don't believe they can actually have it. So it's the thought of what you want and the belief tied to it that you can have it. So if you think about, like, Napoleon's famous saying, it's whatever the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve, right? Conception, most people just don't understand it. The intellectual understanding. Believe, if you think about it, the emotional involvement, and achieve is the physical manifestation of it. But nobody's ever really understands it enough. They read the book like once, but they really don't understand the whole type of process. So ultimately, the main thing is, what do you want in life? Figure it out, think about it, keep it in front of you at all times, and never stop focusing on it. And naturally, your body is going to move towards what you're thinking about all the time. That's what it is.
Sure. Yeah, that's really good. I've been, she doesn't want to hear from me, but my daughter, I've been talking about, look, who you follow on Instagram or anywhere else, it matters a ton. It really is. Those are your thoughts. I mean, those people heavily influence your thoughts, and your thoughts eventually become your behavior, and your behavior really is, defines who you are at the end of the day. So, that's really good. So talk to us, because I do have some rapid fire questions to get to, but talk to us, more recently about, as far as, say, the last 5 years of your professional career. What does that look like?
Yeah, I'll just leave one more thing for you guys. So you guys, your thoughts are the paintbrush of your future, meaning every time you have a thought, it's like a brush on a painting. So it's a lot of them that go hand in hand, but they all have to be going towards the same painting. You can't just go all over the place. But as like the past 5 years, so the first 5 years pretty tough, my business journey, and then the next 5 years, a lot of stuff started taking off rapidly and accelerating. So what happened was, I was running out of money. I was about to go bankrupt, but I was teaching myself, watching free YouTube videos, how to build WordPress websites, SEO and search engine optimization, and that type of stuff. And I built the #1 lead generation websites in North Texas for most of the biggest keywords, like We Buy Houses, Dallas, Sell My House Fast, for a number of years. I've kind of been dethroned from that for a while. By the time I started generating a lot of leads, I started out wholesaling houses. Then I moved into flipping houses, like you guys see on HGTV. Used to flip 8, 12 houses at a time. Started building a rental portfolio, transitioned more into like creative financing, investing, creating notes and selling notes, holding partial notes, because what happened was I bought some rentals and I ran out of working capital and I got myself into a pinch. I got over leveraged. And I came across a man named Mitch Stephen. He wrote a book called My Life in 1,000 Houses. He's a really good guy. He's a good friend of mine now.
Yeah.
And he was telling about owner financing. And so what I did was I sold some of those properties, which brought in the down payment money on the front end, which brought the working capital into my business that I needed to run my business. I maintained my cash flow position because I'm still getting a residual from the middle side of that transaction. But then I avoided a back end expense that was hurting me, which is what I think a lot of investors struggle with, is like landlords. They they learn pretty well how to run numbers on the front side, but they have no expectation of kind of like how it could go bad on the back side. And so I avoided a lot of back end risk, freed up working capital on the front end. And so I went into that space and then did land deals and mobile homes and things like that. Then what happened was my Investor Army channel, which is, if you guys are interested in learning about investments, that's my investment channel called Investor Army. A new brokerage popped up called EXP Realty, and it started kind of growing quick. And it's a global brokerage model that allowed us to build teams through this model. And what happened was people started reaching out to me. I didn't really understand what was going on. I wasn't a licensed real estate agent. And I kind of blew it off for like 2 years, just to be honest. And I had tons of people reach out to me. They're all like, this is super exciting, future real estate. And I'm like, that's great. I'm not an agent. And so what happened was, this is where like the world just kind of plays crazy tricks on you. I had to speak in Mississippi at a creative real estate conference, an owner financing event, essentially. And the event holder had a number of speakers down there, and they put me up into a speaker's house, like kind of like an Airbnb property.
Okay.
And just where we all were staying. And the #1 team leader at EXP, some people know Rob, was speaking at the same event. So I stayed for 3 or 4 days. And it was just like Wolf of Wall Street, the movie, where he said the diner is like, you proved to me you're making $72K a month. I quit my job. I work for you. I was like, he showed me he was making, I couldn't really escape because I was staying in an Airbnb with him. And he showed me he's making $100K a month residual income in just a little over a couple of years. And I was like, you proved to me this is real. I'm going to go get my real estate license. I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to go around the world and build this with you. And he proved to me it was real. I went out there, knocked out my real estate license. Here I'm 5 years later with an equal to or larger residual income than he had at that time. So that was never my path. I never meant to be an agent, never meant to build a team. I never meant to do any of this. It was all a sequential order process of staying in the game, fighting the adversities, doing the best I could at the present moment. And then the world will open up the opportunities along the way. The right people will come in. You just naturally end up in a house with the #1 person in the world. But what I also don't talk about is how strong the energies and the manifestation side of things are, because for time purposes, I leave this out, but I'll tell this here for y'all.
Sure.
I convinced myself in my mind after I stayed with Rob that I was going to go back and get my license. And this is, if you're in sales or in any follow-up business, this is important to understand. My temperature was raised from disinterested to interested, but temperatures can go up and down. And when I got back, life kicked in. I had a bunch of problems and fires and contractor stealing. But 3 weeks later, my interest had dropped to disinterested. Not that I was disinterested. It was that I was now distracted, and it wasn't, it was leaving my thought process. So that you need to have a strong follow-up, because if this didn't happen, I would not be here, because what happened was I had to speak at another real estate conference on the other side of the country. And it was in Arizona. And this was like maybe a month later. And I get to this event, and there's like 4 or 5 speakers. And ironically, guess who was speaking at that event? Rob Flick.
Same guy.
So myself and Rob, 2 different events within a month of each other, just however you want to think about God, universe, attraction, energy, however you want to look at it. I never met him before, didn't know who he was. And I've been speaking for years. And so at that point I connected to, I was like, okay, God, I get it.
Signs all
me
in
the face hard enough.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And that's when I got back, and I signed up at that event for my real estate course. I landed and on that Monday, and I knocked out the tests as fast as the state would legally allow me. I was all in, passed the test, got licensed within 5 weeks. And we went to 150 agents our first year, 300 second year, 600 or so third year. I had 1,000 agents my 4th year at the company, went to about 1,600. And now we're currently closing on 2,900 agents, adding between 150 and 175 a month. And this year we're tracking to already do about $4 billion in sales so far this year.
Wow. I mean, and I just want to reemphasize that, like, the whole poker thing happened completely outside of your control, right? And
Yeah.
and a lot of what has happened to you in the last 5 years also was outside of your control. I mean, you mentioned these two events with Rob, and it's like, it's not like you controlled that at all, but you also showed up every day and continue to take the long-term view and work and work and work. So it's, I think, I love the fact that, in a sense, the universe, screwed you over, if you will, back in your poker days, but now you're kind of being rewarded for staying in it, staying in the game. And that's awesome. So now what does it look like today? Like, what does a week look like for you right now?
Yeah. So it can vary quite. So
Sure.
I have a set schedule throughout the week where I run mastermind calls for the group. I do a lot of live trainings. I do certain presentations and certain things are set in my schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And then what a lot of the rest of my week does, I do is I support a lot of our team leaders and the agents in our group by helping them build their organizations. For example, talking to agents or team leaders or broker owners that they may not have the ability to communicate effectively enough. Let's say we have a brand a new agent that came on, but their best friend's mother's a broker, something like that, where they may not have the ability to communicate right then that this is an opportunity and how to do so. So they use me kind of to lean on. So I do a lot of three-way calls and closing calls for my partners and helping train them. And I do a lot of like consulting calls just for inside the business.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing, more social media like this now, more podcasting.
Yeah.
I run a podcast, but just kind of for our team, just it's promotion for
Mm-hmm.
the agents. I used to run an Investor Army podcast. There's actually an Investor Army podcast channel out there that I've not been active on years, but there's still about 100 good podcasts on there, some creative financing ones and at least
Nice.
options sub two wraps. If you guys really like sub two and owner finance, look for the ones with Grant Kipp and Tim Cook. Those are really good. And I mean,
Awesome.
so it was
Yeah.
just things, just like know where you want to go, guys, and just wake up every
Yeah.
day and things will pan out. You
Yeah.
don't know who's going to come in your life. You don't know what business is going to be the one that makes it. Just
Yeah.
know that every day you're meeting people, every day you're learning something, and every day you get closer to your goals, no matter what's happening. But it's when you take time off and stop and break momentum and 2 weeks in, 1 week out, and you start doubting yourself. So the one thing that I really linked on too hard was at one point I met a lot of successful people, and it wasn't like a slight on them. It was just like they're cool, normal people. And I just realized that all these normal people, just like me, that were born in this world, just like me, that have a heart
Yeah.
and goals and blood running through their body,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't come from, they had to figure it out. And I
Mm-hmm.
just had this understanding that I will figure it out and I'll never
Sure.
stop until I do figure it out. And I did.
Yeah.
You will figure
I
it
love
out
that.
if you never stop. But if you stop and you doubt yourself and you pivot and change things all around,
Yeah.
go this way for a day, come back and go this way for, you got to stay convicted in the path for long enough, even if that's not the business that's going to make it. But you can't just change things every 2 months. So
Sure.
even my
No.
investment business in poker and all this were multi-year commitments.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
weren't just like,
Sure.
oh, I tried this for 6 months and it went to this
Sure.
and then this.
Right.
It was big efforts over a long period of time that built credibility that allowed people in those little micro universes that had credibility that also bridged to other micro universes that helped me walk across the bridge with them to find. So for example, I wouldn't have been able to meet a Rob Flick if I hadn't become successful enough in the investing side to be able to speak at the same event with them.
Sure.
That kind of makes sense.
Absolutely.
And that led me to a bridge to a different
Yeah.
environment, which was the outcome, which was the one that gave me the outcome I have now.
Yeah. But I love what you're kind of hinting at as far as when you're looking at these other successful people. I'm the same way. There's normally not anything special about them. It's not that they're not special. I don't mean to put them down like as a person, but it's like they've just learned how to create the right mindset and the right habits to produce the right behavior, to produce the right results. And no, not everything is within our control, but at the end of the day, for the most part, these people, they're just people. They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you and I do. So there's a lot of I think a lot of us tend to sell ourselves short and use that as an excuse. Oh, it must be nice, or oh, they're different, they're successful, I'm not, or something. And they're just people that have figured it out. And so to me, that's super encouraging.
It's incredibly important. I remember a lot of long nights where like I'd be sitting at the end of a long day where I was struggling, like about to break down and just thinking like I hadn't been successful yet. I hadn't made money. I was going into debt. And I'm like, is it even possible? Or is the system completely, is it rigged? Like, can even a normal person like me actually really make it, or do it does without cheating or scamming people? Or did all these people just come because they had a family member give them an opportunity, or they caught a lucky break, or they came from, I had this battle in my mind. Is it actually even possible? Now, when I started coming across more people that actually had relationships with, because when you're seeing successful people they're either on stage, or they're on the NFL football field, or they're on camera or something where you don't have a personal relationship and you didn't see kind of how they got there, and you create a belief system of how they did it in your mind. That's like somehow they're special and they're beyond what you are. Therefore, you can't do it too. But once you understand that these are all just normal people just like you, and it was a process that they went through, just like cooking a cake. If you follow the right steps in the right order, you're going to get the right cake out. What it does is it gives you the confidence in yourself that you can figure it out, which eliminates the fear, and it gets you to push past risk and burn the ships and go completely all in. Because up until that moment for me, I was a little bit hesitant to really go on and take full commitment to it, which is what it takes to win at a big level. Because if there's always this doubt that it's not even possible to even achieve, and or it's just like you have to win the lottery. Like if you're convincing yourself that there's that few of a chance out of a million to actually do it, you're not. When things get tough, your brain's going to move towards the thought process that the risk or the price is too high to pay. I've already put too much time, money, and effort into this. If I keep going down this road for another year, then I'm just farther into the hole. In another year, I'm further into the hole. Instead of understanding this, you just stay on that road and it's going to pan out. But I think that would help a lot of people understanding that I came from nothing. Not nothing. I mean, I had good parents. They always had clothes. I got clothes, food, never was hungry or anything like that. Had great parents, but I didn't come from like wealth or anything like that. And we had money problems just like everybody else, normal middle-class family. I had no lucky breaks. I had no, handoffs, nobody to introduce. Like I just straight did this from internal creation process, from believing I could and following it up with energy. So you guys, no matter where you came from, no matter what you look like, who your parents are, what city you came from, none of this matters, because there's kind of two belief systems here. It's either, I don't know if we talked about this earlier, but it's either our thought process or our thinking process creates our environment, or our environment creates our thinking process. So is it the things I tell myself and believe in my mind that leads to the outcome, my results, the house, the car, the businesses I build? Or is it the environment around me? Who's the president? How do I look? Who are my parents? Did I come from money? Do I speak with a list? Whatever it is, does that create my thinking? So it has to be one or the other. We either internally control our future, or the environment around us dictates where we show up. And most of the world feels it's the president. I mean, think about this next election. How many people are going to get hyped up on it? Who cares? Like seriously, not to go off the deep end, but they're all the same anyway. It's like, it does not matter, guys. It does not matter what you look like, who you are, guy, girl, color. Like this does not matter. We have so many successful people in our organization from every walk of life, from every belief system. Some are religious, some not. It's all that matters is that you pick a goal that's big enough that you'll stick to it, that's worth achieving when things get tough, and you never stop, and you show up every day. You will get there. But if you stop, then you can't get there. So
that's really good. So you ready for some quick rapid fire questions?
Let's get them.
All right. What is one thing that people misunderstand about you, Connor?
That I have like a crazy bass fishing addiction. So
really?
I think it's weird to people that like I fish all the time. It's a hobby of mine. So when I was little, like when people wanted to be like a professional like athlete or an astronaut or a doctor, I want to be a professional bass fisherman. So like when I get out of school and I'm like 10, I'm going to the pond every day, and now they see me fish. But so one of the cool things is I just ordered my dream boat. It comes in actually like a week from now. I'll be fishing in the Bassmaster Opens here at some point in the future, which was my childhood dream. So awesome. I have that kind of weird hobby, but there's a lot of things that fishing does as far as like giving me the ability to get outside, clear my mind, disconnect from technology, gives me the ability to connect to the world. It gives me the ability to have enjoyment in my life, because for many years in my business career, I was a lot more miserable when I didn't have a hobby, and I worked really long hours. I was working 16, 18 hours a day. I believe that it's better to work maybe 10 to 12 hours a day and have a fulfilled hobby on the side.
Sure.
And then it connected me to like a lot of high net worth individuals, because fishing, hunting, boating, golf, and cars and